अच्छा कलर दे दिया आज तो. Good afternoon and welcome to this teleconferencing session of PGD HHM program. Friends, today we'll be covering topic related to course 4, that is clinical, diagnostic and therapeutic services. And as you know that we have already covered 3 courses, that is introduction to management, then financial management, equipment management, and then we also talked about some of the general aspects of the hospitals. What is the role of hospitals, what is the role of hospital administrator, and the various legal and other issues also. Today we have got 2 sessions. In the first session we will be talking about the 2 important areas of the hospital, that is outpatient department and the ward management. And in the second session we will be talking about the mediation skills. Last time, if you remember, that we covered the legal aspects in the hospital. What are the various legal aspects of the hospital management, that we covered last time. Today we will be just talking about some of the mediation skills, and that we will be talking in the second session. In the first session we are straight away going to Professor Das. Professor Das is with me. He is professor and head of Department of Medical Care and Hospital Administration at National Institute of Health and Family Welfare. Dr. Das, welcome to this teleconference session.
Thank you. Thank you.
And as I mentioned to the student, that today we will be talking about the outpatient department and the inpatient. Because we have got only limited time, 45 minutes.
Right.
And what I would like that if you can tell the salient feature that if as a hospital manager they have to plan the outpatient department, and they have to plan the effective and efficient ward care services. So how should they go about? Some salient features if you can tell them. And then if friends, let me tell you that if there are certain questions, you please feel free to ask questions. I think we'll be willing to answer those questions. And in case there is no question, then I think we have to ask question and
to ourselves only.
Okay, that I will not waste any time, and we'll just go to the outpatient department.
Thank you very much, Professor Arora, and friends, welcome you all. Well, today, as Professor Arora said, we will be discussing outpatient department and the indoor facility. Well, if we can think of a hospital, anybody, leave aside you people, right from a very small child who have got some orientation with this kind of system to a very old man. Whenever we are speaking about hospital, these 2 things first come to our mind. And believe me friends, these are the 2 really very, very important departments of the hospital. Outpatient department as such plays a very, very important role for a hospital manager, because they need to do really something for it, because this is kind of a view window of the hospital. The community by large, I mean, having some idea or some impression about the hospital through the outpatient department only, because that is the first point of contact. And almost 80%, that means 4/5 of our patients who are admitted into the wards are admitted through the outpatient only. Next to it is only through the emergencies. So friends, outpatient department not only cater to a large number of patients in one go, but otherwise this is kind of a gateway to the hospital, and if we are not very, very careful and very meticulous about the planning, designing and functioning of the outpatient department, the name and fame of the hospital might be at risk. Another importance for the outpatient department is that outpatient department, that cost which the services we are providing the outpatient department, which is more commonly known as ambulatory care. So this the cost at which a patient in the outpatient department we are treating is almost 1/28 of the cost of an indoor patient. One of the Scandinavian country study has shown that with the cost of the cost incurred on one patient for treating in indoor, by that cost you can treat 20 outpatients. So the cost wise also it is very, very important, and it is now a worldwide phenomena that indoor facilities will be only for the acute care services. For rest of the things, once the patient is stabilized, the patient need to continue the treatment from outpatient. As a result, nowadays you have found that not only we need to strengthen the outpatient department, most of your diagnostic therapeutic services are also being provided through the outpatient department, and not only this, some of the services, the surgical procedures, that are also done through outpatient, and most commonly what we call that daycare centers. That means the patient are called in the morning, done the procedures, and by afternoon the patient may be sent back. So with these things, let us try to find out what is outpatient department. A person given general or emergency diagnostic, therapeutic or preventive health services provided through a hospital's facility or health program, and who at the time is not registered as an inpatient in the hospital. That is outpatient department. The functions of the outpatient department is not only the treating the patient, but it plays a very important role as early diagnosis, ambulatory treatment, that is patient is not been admitted to the hospital, and through outpatient that treatment has been given, whatsoever it may be. Maybe it is a diagnostic, it is therapeutic, it is only rehabilitative. Then screening and investigation for admission. Nowadays those old days are gone when a surgery is to be done, even for hernia also. The patient was admitted first, all the investigations done in the ward, then the PSC of the patient done, and then the patient is taken to OT. But nowadays those days are gone, everything done in the outpatient department, and only on the day of operation the patient need to come to hospital, straightway almost coming to the OT, and then subsequently coming to the ward. Follow-up care and rehabilitation, particularly this word rehabilitation, we need to give much more importance to this. Health education, definitely, of course, you can't find a better place than outpatient department when the patients are in a captive situation, particularly the attendants of the patient in a captive situation, and more than eager to know about the disease, their cure, their care, and all these things. And on that time, if we can talk about this preventive and promotive aspect of that particular disease, that will not only be taken by the patients very well, but will go a long way in further propagation into the community. Training, I think I need not to talk about this training, because all of us who has grown in the hospitals, whether it is a paramedics, the nursing, it is a medical, the dental, everybody, we have learned our skill from this outpatient department to a great extent. And definitely, of course, up-to-date record keeping of the outpatient department, because the record keeping in this department helps us not only for the various research purposes, but it also helps us as an administrator to take decision on various management aspects, and also for your administrative purposes, medical legal purposes, so many things. So the records of the outpatient department is very, very important, and we must be very careful about this record keeping.
Dr. Das, you mean to say that it's not only that clinical services is being provided in the outpatient, but other outpatient department has got other functions.
So many other functions
like promotive, you mentioned,
exactly.
Training you mentioned.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, as you have very rightly said, sir. So like in my next slide, it is that the prevention and health promotion, like well baby clinic, antenatal and family welfare, school health clinic, immunization, control of communicable diseases, so many things definitely we can do from outpatient department. You are absolutely right, sir. So what are the main problems in our outpatient department? Mainly you will find is the late arrival of the patients, inadequate preliminary documentation, very, in a sketchy way the records are been maintained or been prepared, maybe the diagnosis is not written, investigations not written, so all these things are there. Late arrival of the specialist, most of the time the problem starts from this point only. Improper patient flow. In one surge there is a huge number of patients, and the other time there are hardly any patients into it. As a result, that queue jumping, which is kind of a national character for all of the country. Further problems are diagnostic departments located far away, inadequate facilities, very, very important. Most of our hospitals, I am not talking about the metro hospitals at the metro cities or in the private sector, but other hospitals, you will find inadequate waiting area, hardly any drinking water facility, toilet facilities, less we talk better it is, snack bars, most of the time you won't able to find them out, near to that outpatient department. Non-availability of the drug is another very, very common problem, particularly in the public sector hospitals. Lack of human approach, very much, kind of a attitude, non-helping type of attitude. Non-availability of the stretcher squad, because not that every patient can walk in, they need some help, maybe the wheelchair or maybe a stretchers, but in front of the outpatient department hardly anything of that type will be available. Long waiting time, requirement of the many visits, not in a single day everything could be done. The patient has been called next day for investigation and a week after for further consultation, so on and so forth. And frequent changes of medical officer or the treating physicians. Keeping all these things in mind, and when we are going to plan for an outpatient department, roughly first and foremost we need to know what should be your exact type of the total patient requirement or total the patient load you are going to expect in your outpatient department. Roughly it is said that each indoor bed attracts some 5 to 6 OPD patient per day, which means that if you are a 100-bedded hospital, that every day you will be having a OPD attendance of 500 to 600 patients. So that is how you can do. There are some other methods also, like in a given community or in a given population where the hospital is situated or the outpatient department is to be established. Roughly it is said that one person in a year in that community will visit 3 times. So that means if it is a population of 1 lakh, so in that condition throughout the year you will be expecting around 3 lakhs of population, patients.
3 visits per person.
Almost average 3 visits per person, average. Maybe one person making 6 visits and another person no visits throughout the year. So that is how we roughly estimate it. So with this, then you need to have that proper, it is not sitting, it is kind of a siting kind of thing, where the site in which you will be having it. Then privacy and dignity of the patient to be respected, requirement of the handicapped patient. This is also very, very important. In most of our hospitals, we will find that the OPDs are not disabled friendly kind of thing. If a patient is coming into a wheelchair and no person is there to, or no attendant is there with him or her, or patient is coming with some sticks or all these things, it becomes very difficult. Climbing stairs, walking down the corridor, hardly any railing besides it, using of the toilet. So we need to take care of all these things. There should be proper ramps, there should be railings inside, the doors should be in that way that it can be opened in either way, adequate the width of the door. Next is expansion should be possible without disturbing the circulation pattern. Whenever we are planning for the department, you should keep in mind that there will be requirement of further expansion, because a rule of thumb says the requirement will be double in every 7 to 10 years. So the way you have planned today, after 7 to 10 years, your requirement will be double to that. And every 7 to 10 years, obviously you cannot make another new OPD. So in that condition, whenever you are planning, you should plan for next 30 to 40 years in mind. So that means you must have that kind of area where you can expand or you can scope, like you have seen in our Safdarjung hospital. Now how they are expanding their outpatient departments, because they were having that much of area with them. And preferably, of course in the metro cities it is not possible, but preferably try to have the outpatient department on the ground floor only. Okay, so this is the kind of a schematic diagram of it, and I am sure that all of you have got some fair idea that after entrance there will be reception, then registration and records, some waiting space, examination and clinical departments, followed by that hospital inpatient and laboratory services or support services with pharmacy, direct connection with the casualty also. So that is a kind of a schematic diagram we must have. So general planning aspect, the main activities of the OPD, that which we have said, and principle of planning should be ease for access, respect and dignity and privacy for the patients, quite orderly pattern of workflow, requirement of the handicapped visitors, possibility of regrouping of functions within the department. That commonly or interrelated functioning department should be close by and others may be at the distance. Possibility of extension or expansion, as I said. Arrangement for separation of incompatible types of patients, example noisy children from the anxious and infirms, and provision for patient's companion, like attendants who are accompanying them, you must have the proper place for them also. Space requirement, these are all given in your book, that average is 250 square meter per doctor for a complex facility. And I think I can skip through these things. We don't require all these things because these are all given. But virtually your OPD, outpatient department, can be divided into these 4 zones, that is the public zone or entrance zone, which includes your waiting area, public toilets, sitting arrangements, drinking water, and all these things should be there. Then ambulatory or joint use zone, that is reception, clinical room, seminar room. Why we call it joint use zone? Because here it is not only of the public, but it is the service providers are also there. All your consultants chamber, examination rooms, dressing rooms, so all these kind of things are all been given there. Then the administrative zone. This is the zone where your administrative area is there, which overlooks the outpatient department area, and particularly this will also have that payment counters where your payments and all other things which are required can be done here. And staff zone, this is exclusively for the staff people, that is staff cloakrooms, toilets, workrooms, stores, etc., etc. It is no harm if we can provide a small room which otherwise can be used for the retirement room, for having some tea or snacks for the people who are working for 4 hours or 5 hours in the OPD. So after a break of after interval of every 2 hours, they can have a break for 10 to 15 minutes. And this room, if the situation arises, can be converted into a seminar room also, where you can discuss some of the very difficult cases or very peculiar kind of cases. Those can be discussed over here also. While managing the OPD facilities, our first thing is scheduling system, that is traditionally a block appointment system has been used, where several patients are given appointment at the same time. So we make small time intervals, and in that time interval a group of maybe 10, 20, 50, 100 depending upon the workload of the OPD are being given. Why we give this block appointment system is this: if you give the individual appointment system, in which if the patient is not late coming or not at all coming, in that case you are wasting the time. Whereas in the block appointment, if one particular patient is not there, the other is there. So in that block, that can be taken care of. And the studies have shown that in individual appointment, that failure rate, that means the non-show up of the patient, is almost 16%. Whereas in the block appointment, if you do, it is coming down, or you can reduce it to less than 50% of that. That means for 7 to 8%. So that is the problems which I have already told you. That can be large block or small blocks. Service time and delay, I think we can. So establishing an appointment system, patient moves through the routine stations, and we can skip this. Is establishing a patient sequencing policy. The policy for the order in which the clients are served to be known to staff and the other client, and patient to be called in close to the appointment time. Patient with earlier appointment to be served first, that means first come first serve basis. Patient without appointment will be served after those having appointments, and patient who are more than 20 minutes late will be treated as walk-ins, means they haven't registered with us. And these are some of the policy decisions we have to take when we are making the appointment system, because appointment systems are very, very important to reduce your overcrowding and long queues. Sick patient will always be seen as soon as possible, that is goes beyond without saying. And to enforce the policy, a slip of paper may be attached with each patient's record showing appointment time and the sequence number with time of arrival. Staff members then select by appointment priority first and by arrival priority second. So these are the things should be followed not only by the staff, for the patient also, and that is why by a slip, if we can give it to the patient, a printed type of thing can be given to the patient. So it becomes a kind of a cordial relationship and can be followed properly. How to use, how user friendly is your outpatient department? Certain aspects to be looked into for it. Informations provided before an appointment. See to it whether the patient was thoroughly informed about it or not. Information that can be provided are as under: the date, time, proposed duration of the appointment, telephone number of the helpline, car parking, transport informations, a reminder about where to report upon arrival at the clinic, example to the main reception or straightway to the doctor or to a nursing staff, details about who will conduct the appointment, written information about the investigations, suggestions for suitable clothing to wear if it is required or relevant, and advice regarding whether the patient should come in empty stomach or not. So these kind of things can be given. Hospital can be intimidating place for the patient. If the visitors can reach to the correct clinic with minimum confusion, this will reduce the anxiety and be less tiring for them. And not only that, you will find your crowding in the hospital will also come down, because most of the time you will find the patient is roaming around all over the places because he is not finding it properly. I mean, he could not locate the proper area where he actually wants to go. Reception desk is the first point of contact. The patient should be properly, received and welcomed, and well-mannered, ordinarily friendly person should be manning the reception. Okay, I think we have discussed about the appointment and waiting time in detail. Patients failing to attend an appointment, even in best-run clinics, some patients may fail to keep the appointment. It is everywhere it is possible. Hence, all staff should be aware of the procedure to deal with the patient who failed to attend, that means did not attend the OPD in time. Patient survey may be provided insight into the reasons why patients fail to attend. If you find that suddenly the more number of patients are failing to attend, that means there is something some problem there in your system, you need to relook into it. I have already said about the waiting area, what are the things you must have in your waiting area. Maybe it's toilets and baby changing facilities, these are the things, but at least 3-4 basic facilities: waiting area, a proper ceiling fan over it, neat and clean, toilets, drinking water, and if possible a small snack bar where at least tea, coffee and some biscuits are at least available. Staff should wear clearly legible badges, and a who is who display may be helpful. And let me tell you friends, and that is why in front of your OPD, a citizen charter should be there, where the type of the OPD, type of the facilities, what are the services you are going to provide, the timings, the doctors who are available. So all these things should be neatly written. And another thing is this, below that, if somebody is having any grievance or any complaint, who is the person where they should report for this and how to approach these people. All these details, that means the room number, the telephone number, and all these things should be given. Okay, communication, that is exactly what I was telling. It may be in the form of a, what you can say, board in which all these things are written, or it can be with in the form of some leaflets or small booklets which can contain all these things. Other methods of communication, maybe that CCD TV and all these things can also be there. So, sir, with this, I think I can stop here for this thing. If any particular question is there, it can be.
And if there is any question pertaining to the planning and organization of OPD services, you can ask those questions. Dr. Das has very well covered the general planning aspects of the OPD. He has told you the various zones of the functional zones of the OPD, that is public zone, that joint zone, and then the this administrative zone and the staff zone, these 4 zoning he has. And then he has also told that when you are going to plan for the OPD services, you must take certain thing into the consideration, that on an average per person 3 visits will be made during a year. And then also when one is planning for the OPD services, the scope for expansion, future expansion, like he mentioned that it is going to double in 7 to 10 years.
Yes, exactly.
So that also should be kept in mind while planning this thing. And certain problem areas which he told about, that is waiting time, the reception areas are not good, and the attitude of the staff. All those things are already given in the blocks. You can go through, and if still you feel there is any question, you can ask just now, or maybe next teleconferencing we'll be having next week, that is on 31st of August. Again, if there are certain questions pertaining to these things, you can feel to ask those questions. Now we'll go on to another important area, as Dr. Das was mentioning, that once the patient has been to OPD, another important area comes to that when the patient has been admitted in the hospital, that is the inpatient services or the ward services. As he mentioned that this is a window of the hospital, so that what has to be planned inside the hospital for providing the medical care services to the patient.
Thank you, Professor Arora, and that is exactly what he is telling, that is the indoor facilities or the ward planning. So, while we talk about the ward planning and management, our main aim is, in the planning of a ward, the aim is to minimize the workload of the nursing staff and provide basic amenities to the patient within that unit. So this is our main idea, because we should not be concerned about the patient, but we need to look into the other people who are providing the services. So we need to take care of the requirements of the nursing staff also, see to it they are not unnecessarily overworked or overloaded, and how to minimize that, but without compromising the quality and the basic facilities which are required for the patients. So let us see how we do it. Now friends, while we talk about the ward facility, you will find in a hospital not all wards are of equal specialty or equal type, and not in every ward you require to give same intensity or same type of patient care. That is why
you mean to say that different kind of wards require different types of medical care services?
Exactly, sir. And that is the thing, like the patients which we are having in our hospitals, forget about the specialty. For every specialty you will find that every patient is not requiring the same intensity of patient care. Some may be requiring much more, some may be requiring much slightly less.
More serious patients require more intensive care, and the less serious patients require the less amount of nursing care.
Absolutely right, sir. Like if you go back to our wards, you will find just near to your nursing station, the first bed, the patient in that bed is the most serious patient. The patient which requires a constant kind of observation. So keeping that thing in mind, and you will know that the patient kept in the veranda or the end of the ward, these are the the patient who don't require that much of attention. Most of the time the patient can take care of himself. Exactly on the same principle, we divide this patient care into this 5-6 categories. And first one, and this categorization is known as progressive patient care, in which the first one is the intensive care, second we call the intermediate care, third is self care, long term care, home care, and outpatient care or the ambulatory care. So here in intensive care, where you require almost 16 to 18 hours of intense medical care, means the doctor should be there, and that is how you will find, and this is what I am called as intensive care units, ICUs, where you are having those monitors and all these things, and that is why nowadays the doctors are not literally sitting beside the patient. But in olden days they used to literally sit in this nursing station and having, so that is why in ICU you will always find 1 or 2 doctors or round the clock sitting there. Then intermediate care, it is for 7 to 10 hours, that is in which we are having our ward management or the general wards. Then self care, that is 2 to 3 hours, where that nursing staff is giving some support to that, but otherwise mostly the patient is taking care of himself or herself. Then long term care, occasional, and I think these days are gone. These are the things where we used to have those sanatoriums, TB sanatoriums and all these things, and most of the time the patient is coming, collecting the medicine, taking it, and sitting there only or having in that hospital only. And last one is that ambulatory care, which you have already talked, because here you don't require any hospitalization, the patient can take care by himself in his home only. So in your hospital you will find that out of total hospital bed requirement, 1 to 2% of the beds required for the intensive care, and that is why you are having those ICUs, in which you have the intensive nursing care for 10 to 20%, medium nursing care 42%, and these things we can come back. Coming back to this nursing unit or ward, which we called from where that indoor facilities are being given. Wards are those areas in a hospital where medical care is made available beside an endeavor for maintenance of an appropriate physical and social environment to the patient at ease. In short, our main aim is to try to make an environment for the patient so that he should have the feeling that he is, lying down in his own bed in his own home. So that kind of ambience,
Some
that kind of
homely
environment,
feeling has to be
a
there.
homely kind of feeling should be there. That should be our main aim into it. What are the functions into it for giving this? Provide suitable accommodation when in a state of high dependence. Provide quality medical care by way of diagnosis, treatment or drug administration, and monitoring the progress at optimal cost. Maintenance of an appropriate environment for the patient and hospital staff. It is not only always the patient, but it is for the hospital staff also. Prepare the patient for return to normal life as early as possible. Provide opportunity for training and research, like as we talked in our outpatient department. Next place in our hospital is your indoor patient or indoor, where we have got the chances to learn maximum, and provide facilities to meet the need of the visitors and the attendants, because you just can't ignore these people. Hence, in our planning consideration for the wards, we need to keep in mind what are the physical facilities we need to provide, location and layout, equipments and material, and manpower. And primarily, as I was talking about in OPD, here also virtually we can divide this indoor, the ward planning into 4 areas. That is, the first is the primary or the patient care area, where the patients are there. Second is ancillary, third is sanitary, and fourth is auxiliary. Now let us see one by one what are these. That is, the first, the primary care area, where the patients are being provided the services. These are the patient housing area where the beds are there. It may be a single bed where you require 80 to almost 100 to 120 square feet area, because it is a single bedded room. But if you are having 2 to 4 beds in a small cubicle, it will be at least 70 to 80 square feet per bed. If it is 6 bedded, it can go slightly below 70 to 100 square feet bed, because it depends again from the specialty to specialty. If it is a obstetric ward, if it is a orthopedic ward, hence you will be requiring slightly more area, where if it is only a medicine, psychiatry or skin ward, you will be requiring less area. That is why this range is given. But for ICU, gynae and others, maybe you will be requiring, as I was telling, more area. Particularly in ICU, it should be around 150 square feet area per bed. Hence, for a general ward, just to summarize it, you require 70 square feet area per bed, and for acute ward, it should be around 90 square feet bed per bed. So, if we look into the bed space, if this is the wall, at least 2.5 meter of distance between the head end of the bed to the wall. Between 2 beds, it should be 1.5 meters distance, and from foot end to foot end, because this side also you will be having some more beds, it will be 0.9 meter from center of the aisle. From either side, one side 9 meter and other side 0.9 meter. The other areas are other dimensions are width of the hall, the space between 2 rows 5 meters. I think we need not to go into the details of it. Come to the support service area or the ancillary service area, where the nursing station and the duty room of the doctor is there, treatment room, clean room or utility room, pantry, unit store, dining and day room, and ward lab. This is a very good concept, because in our hospitals our food is being served at the bed of the patient only. This is not a very good process things to do. The patient who can move around, they can come to this dining room and have it there, because when you are having your food in the ward, in your bed, that means if not some dropping, even the smell of the food will be retained there for some time, and this will attract the pests, the flies, the mosquitoes, cockroaches and all these things, which will also bring in the infections. So by this we can reduce the infection rate into this. The sanitary area, mainly that bathrooms and toilets, the recommendation or the guidelines for the bathrooms should be 1 bathroom for 8 beds and 1 toilet for every 5 beds. Then you must have a dirty utility room. Most of the time you will find our bathrooms are stinking, because all those mops and all these things, wet mops, are all kept there, and they most of the time will not be having proper ventilation. As a result, this wet mop gives a stinking smell. And if we can have a separate utility room for this housekeeping staff where they can keep these mops and all these things, this will reduce the stink and the infection for these bathrooms. Similarly, store for the sanitary staff and a separate hand washing area. They need not to go inside the bathroom to wash their hand. A proper wash basins and all these things should be there. Auxiliary area should have the duty room for the doctors, a room for the attendants. Most of the time we don't consider the attendants also require some privacy, a dignified place to stay. Most of the time you will find they are sitting on the corridors, and at the time any senior officer or senior medical officer is moving, the security will remove them like they are, shooing away those cows and dogs, and again they will flock back. So this kind of thing should be stopped, and we must find out a proper area or room where the attendants can sit, because most of the time we require their help for our patient care. Room for the staff, a small recreation room, and seminar or demo room. Primarily the wards can be, ward design are of two types, that is the Nightingale or open type, or Rigs, which comes after one of the famous hospital in Denmark, which is the closed type. And the various shapes, this is an open ward, that old type of conventional ward in a big hall with a nursing station in between, and the beds are all around and perpendicular to the wall or windows of the ward. That is another of, in contrary to that conventional ward, this is a ward in which we are having small cubicles, because that line I could not put it here. So these are the small cubicles, but not having a permanent kind of separations. They are having some glass separations in between, and these cubicles will be of 4 to 6 beds, and in between this there will be a small partition up till 3 feet height, 3 or 3.5 feet height. There will be a cemented kind of partition, and above that there will be a glass partition. Now the advantages in a open type of ward, what happens, there will be a lot of noise, lack of privacy, and all these things will be there. Whereas in this kind of thing, the noise to a great extent will be stopped. If you are putting some curtain on this glass panels, the privacy can be maintained, and also it reduces the cross infection from one bed to other. Various kinds of this Rigs ward can be prepared, the nursing station in between, and cubicles are all around, or it may be a T-shaped one, it may be a X-shaped one, it may be Y-shaped one, it may be a circular one. And the circular one, mostly these are the typical of your critical care areas, particularly intensive cares, where from the nursing station each and every bed are having within the direct eye contact. Okay. So equipment and personal norms. So guidelines or norms of the equipment for the different sizes have been compiled and prepared by NHRW long back, but since many of the organizations, particularly the Army, the Railway, ESI, they have prepared their own, and BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards, have also come out with this equipment for various sizes of the hospitals.
There are norms by BIS.
There are norms by the BIS also, Bureau of Indian Standards. Then for the personnel, the staffing norm, the doctor bed ratio for a general hospital, that is 1 doctor for every 10 bed, but if it is a teaching hospital, it will be 1 doctor for every 5 bed. And nurse bed ratio for a general hospital, it will be 1 nurse for every 5 beds, but for a teaching hospital, there will be 1 nursing staff for every 3 beds. And then for every 100 bed, 4 ward sisters, 30 staff nurses, and for fraction of 100 at the rate of 1 staff nurse, or for every 3 to 5 beds, and ward sister for every 25 beds. At this way you can, these are some of the guidelines, and these are all given in your modules. I am not going to the details of it. The other nurse bed ratio for the different wards are there, that like OT, ICU, casualty, specialty nurse, and incidentally all these are
the all important areas. It is very less, 2:1 or 1:1.
Yeah. Sir, these are the 2 nurses for every OT table. But if it is not possible, what they do is this: 1 nurse for 1 OT table is must, no denial about it. and one withdrawal nurse in between two tables. So that is how you usually do, but it will be always better if you are having two nurses for every OT table. So that is how these ratios are given. That is nurse per bed. This first one is the nurse and these are the number of beds. That is how it is given. Like ICU, it is 1:1 ratio. Okay. The possible problem areas, our administrative and management problems, secretarial support and automation problem, housekeeping, materials management, particularly the availability of the materials. Security is a very big concern for the administrators in our OPDs, in the indoors. Communication, including dissemination and feedback, and education and training. To conclude, patient is most important in the hospital. Patient is not dependent on us, rather we are dependent on him. Patient is not an interruption to our work, rather he is our purpose of it. Patient is not an outsider to our business, rather he is our business. Hence the patient is a person and not a statistics. He has feeling, emotion, biases and wants. It is our business to satisfy him, and again I will repeat it, if we are there because patients are there. If the patients are not there, we have got no purpose to be there in the hospital. So this should be our biggest motto while we are planning, designing or providing services either in the outpatient department or in the indoor facilities.
I think
Thank you so much.
If you remember that in Love and Bailey's book, at the end it was given the patient is the center of our all activities around which all our efforts revolves. And
right, sir. Absolutely, exactly, exactly.
So I think Dr. Das has very comprehensively covered in this particular session about the various planning consideration of inpatient services, that is ward. He has also talked about that various types of wards, that is rig wards and the open wards, and he also mentioned about the various types of wards, semicircular, Y-shaped, X-shaped, and then he also mentioned some of the problems areas in the management of in providing the inpatient areas. And then regarding the staffing and the nursing ratios, he has mentioned that in what type of staff is required for depending upon the nature of medical care to be provided. And then of course the other managerial issues which are involved, what are the various other issues involved in the management of the inpatient care. But I think we have not received any questions from and it seems that the students are either not sitting at various centers or there is some problem with the communication. But Dr. Das, when we are talking about this today, you have covered two important areas, that is outpatient department and the inpatient department.
Right.
So is there any this thing whenever these students they are going to manage this hospital services, is there any linkages between inpatient and outpatient department? How should they go about? What are the things they should keep at the back of their mind that
well, that is why at the very beginning when I was discussing about that outpatient department, I was telling, definitely you are very correct that these two departments have got very important role to play, and their coordination among themselves, their interaction between themselves is very important, because if our outpatient department is not properly screening the patients, not satisfying the patients properly, in that condition it is not only that overloading in our inpatients will be increased, and on the other side, if the hospital is not able to cope up with this thing, the name and fame of the hospital will be at a very greater risk. So as a result, just to decrease your patient load in your inpatients, because if your patient load increases, the quality of care you will not be able to provide from the inpatient. So you need to strengthen your outpatient department to the higher extent, to the greater extent, so that most of the requirements of the patient will be taken care of. And let me tell you one thing, nobody, you ask to yourself also, would like to very happily want to admit it in the hospital. isn't it? So we need to look into this aspect very
And that's why
carefully.
you introduce the term of the ambulatory care.
Ambulatory
also.
care,
If it is
exactly.
as far as possible, if the patient can be treated daycare center or ambulatory care, then it. Okay, thank you, Dr. Das. I think we are running out of the time and we have to stop here. And in the friends, let me tell you that in the next teleconferencing on 31st, we will be covering other clinical services areas like accident emergency services, operation theatre, ICU, blood transfusion services, radiation services, and laboratory and diagnostic services. That will be covering in the teleconferencing to be organized on 31st August, that is next week, at the same timing from 11 to 45. Thank you, Dr. Das, for being with us and giving very useful inputs to our students. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.